following the rare and closely watched summit between Russian President Vladimir Putin and North Korean leader Kim Jong Un in Russia, Putin has accepted an invitation to visit the North. The high-profile summit, which has sparked discussions of a potential arms deal between the two nations, took place in Russia's far east and included promises of Russian assistance for North Korea's space program and discussions on possible military cooperation. Kim Jong Un, known for his isolationist stance, extended an invite to President Putin to visit North Korea, which was immediately accepted. North Korea's state news agency has said Putin accepted the invitation with pleasure and reaffirmed his will to invariably carry forward the history and tradition of the Russia-DPRK friendship. DPRK, of course, a reference to North Korea. During their private talks, Kim expressed his belief that Russia would win over its enemies. The summit has raised serious concerns among Western nations, particularly the United States, about the possibility of illicit arms deals between Russia and North Korea. Such an agreement could have significant implications for the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. This meeting signals a potential shift in Northeast Asian geopolitics with a stronger alliance between North Korea, Russia and China, potentially destabilizing the region. Analysts have expressed concern about the impact of North Korean ammunition on the conflict in Ukraine. Amid Russia's isolation in the West due to its actions in Ukraine, President Putin has lauded the strengthening of cooperation and friendship between Russia and North Korea. The offer of Russian assistance in building satellites for North Korea also has raised concerns and objections from the US, citing potential violations of UN Security Council resolutions. The US State Department has issued a statement saying, "We've taken a number of actions already to sanction entities that brokered arms sales between North Korea and Russia, and we will not hesitate to impose additional sanctions if appropriate." Kim Jong Un's visit to Russia was accompanied by a significant military presence, including top Russian military officials, highlighting the depth of their cooperation. Meanwhile, the US State Department has approved a $5 billion sale of advanced F-35 fighter jets to South Korea. This decision, as we said, comes against the backdrop of Kim Jong Un's meeting with Putin, underscoring regional tensions. The sale of these fighter jets is seen as a measure to bolster South Korea's defense capabilities and maintain interoperability with US forces in the region. The US State Department says this sale will not disrupt the military balance in the region. Tensions on the Korean Peninsula have been on the rise, with Kim Jong Un criticizing joint military exercises between the US and South Korea, viewing them as potential preparations for an invasion.
When you see what looks to be increased cooperation and probably military transfers, as we've said for some time, we have reason to believe they were going to discuss military transfers. That is quite troubling and would potentially be in violation of multiple UN Security Council resolutions. Possibilities of weapons flowing two different ways here, right? With respect to either direction, we would watch very closely and be concerned and will not hesitate to pose sanctions if and when it's appropriate. So it says something about the overall context of how this war is going for Russia. And with respect to what any outcomes might be, we have taken a number of actions already to sanction entities that have brokered arms sales between North Korea and Russia, and we won't hesitate to impose additional actions if appropriate.
Okay. Going back to Shri at this point, Shri, lots to unpack here. Of course, we've known for days now that the United States has been greatly concerned by this growing Putin-Kim bromance and camaraderie and the cooperation that is likely to happen in the area of defense. The big question here is, if North Korea were to supply ammunition to Russia for its ongoing war against Ukraine, which seems to be an inevitability, what impact do you believe it is likely to have on the Ukraine war? Could it become a huge headache for Ukraine and NATO? That's one. And two, you know, this growing talk about the nexus that is, or shall we say this axis that's now emerging in Asia between Russia, China and North Korea. You know, there are those who said this could be destabilizing for the region. Does that sound far-fetched, or is that a matter of concern indeed?
So, Neha, first of all, the invite to Putin is diplomacy par for the course. It's courtesy that when a leader visits another country, he invites the leader of that nation to come and visit his nation as well. So, I will not attach much significance. If it happens, it'll probably happen next year because Sergei Shoigu, the defense minister, is supposed to go visit North Korea in October this year. So that's the easy bit. Now your question was if North Korea ends up giving ammunition to Russia, what happens? And what will be the impact on the Ukraine war? Obviously, this is going to prolong the war. Ukraine of late has been claiming that it is reclaiming some parts of the territory occupied by Russian. I think it can, that will be a setback. Anyway, the progress for Ukraine is very slow because the mines which Russian army has planted as they have retreated from the Ukraine territory. So they are making very, very tentative progress. So that's a big challenge for Ukraine in recovering its territory. So this, we are then looking at a more prolonged war because, backing Ukraine is like US and Europe and all the sophisticated countries with, very, very sophisticated arms. And now the next question is, you hinted at this terrible triad as some analysts are calling. So when I look at what's happening, first of all, Putin and Kim don't need to put up a song and dance if they really want to do something which is like, hush hush and very strategic. This is a show they are putting on for the world, for the US, for Europe, and all the others, to tell them as a warning, as a political warning to them that what can happen. Now, will Putin actually end up giving Kim anything significant? I have my own doubts. Certainly, I don't think that's going to happen that easily, Neha. So the one man who's smiling as this bromance is put on display is the man who's not even in the scene. That's President Xi Jinping of China. Now, let me explain why I say that. Now, if you have to de-escalate the situation, who are you going to talk to? You'll have to talk to Kim or Putin. As far as Kim is concerned, I think the boat for any kind of negotiation, any kind of rapprochement with him has probably sailed. Now, with Putin, he's not going to back off from this Ukraine war because it'll be a huge loss of face for him. And he cannot, back off without winning something substantial, at least some major concession from Ukraine in terms of land or some parts of the country. So now, who does the world turn to broker a peace and to get them? And who's more powerful than these two people? I mean, Kim is nothing. Putin is a very strong leader with a big country, but China is much bigger, more powerful. Who will they turn to? It'll be Xi Jinping. So, if I've been saying that this is happening with China's blessing, it's possibly because China wants to escalate this bromance to a point where the Western powers have no choice but to come running to China and say, okay, let's make a deal. We'll go easy on you a little bit, but then you help us de-escalate this situation because the only people Putin and Kim will listen to is Xi Jinping. So this is how I think this whole thing is going to play out, Neha. But are they coming together? Yes. But ultimately, is it something which can hold for and endure for long years? I don't think so because all of them are dictators. And one of the characteristics is low trust in anyone, especially other leaders. So this might be happening in a short time. This might be on display for a few months, at least if the war is going on. But eventually, there will be de-escalation, and a key role will be played by China in de-escalating the situation, Neha.
Okay, so you're saying the love story may not be an enduring one, but I still want to ask you, you don't believe it's a terrible triad, Sri?
Well, it is a terrible triad in the sense that they have very, little regard for international frameworks and international institutions, and they seem to be solely focused on their own interests, even at the cost of, the sufferings that millions of people are going through, especially in countries like Africa, because of the food shortage and the food inflation. So to that extent, it is a terrible triad. Some analysts with what they call is right. But I think there would be a way to de-escalate the situation. And the China route is what I think Western countries, including US, will take to get to that point, Neha.
Well, as rhetorical as it sounds, I think terrible triad is a fair description.